it again. We're going back to Omaha. And it's on to the College World Series Final. The 2015 National Champions.
And welcome into another edition of 1186, the podcast, the official podcast of the UVA baseball program. It is Monday, March 10th. I am Damon Dillman, joined as always by Andrew Ramsbacker. And our guest this week, back on the field since we last talked here on the podcast, junior right-hander Jack O'Connor. Jack, glad you could join us here on the podcast, especially I know it's spring break. I know you're trying to relax right now. I'm glad you could take a few minutes out of your busy schedule to join us, but you got big plans for spring break?
Yeah, thank you, Damon. Glad to be here. Not really big plans. We were going to Maryland, like you said, and then going to California. So we got that. But other than that, kind of just laying low and taking the break from classes and enjoying that while I can.
Yeah, leaving for Maryland, then flying straight from there, you think? Or we don't even know the travel plans yet, right?
TBD for us. We're not sure yet, but it doesn't really matter for us.
You find out when you get on the bus?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
When's the last time you went on like a true spring break vacation? I mean, playing baseball so much.
Yeah. I mean, a true spring break vacation, I'd have to go back to like maybe middle school, which is crazy to think about now. But no, I mean, this is what you want to do. Like, this is why you play, is to be playing when you can. And, you know, like you said, I'm grateful to be back and actually be able to travel. So it's fun. And I'm excited to be on this trip.
That's a great segue because, yeah, like you said, you are back. You are pitching again. What is it like it's a simple question, but what's it like to be pitching again, be contributing, getting guys out again?
Yeah, it's awesome. And like, there's a lot of upside to it, obviously. Like, I'm super happy and pumped to be back on the field and competing and stuff. But there's also like a small part that's still kind of tormenting because it's like you're so close, but like there's still work to be done. Like, I still need to do a couple things to like refine my pitches and how I'm executing. And then also, how much I can actually contribute to the team in terms of like the innings and what I can give in a certain weekend or in a certain week. It's still not as much as I'll be able to hopefully by the end of the season. So it's great to be back out there, but a lot more work to get done. And until we're to that point, it's still a little bit frustrating, but taking it day by day.
What percentage do you think you're at right now?
In terms of effort, or what do you mean? Like, sorry.
You're talking about like still getting back. Like how far away are you do you think to like those little things that you're refining? Like how far away are you to get to maybe where you actually want to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to actually quantify a percentage on it, just because it's hard to put numbers on any of these things. But I'm close for sure. A lot of it is again just building up the arm strength. Like with the injury that I've had, it's tough and pretty uncommon, and so you just want to be on the cautious end of everything. And a lot of that is just like when you're building back up, take it slow, take it easy, don't rush back into getting too many innings. But in terms of the stuff, I feel like I'm back right where I was before I got injured. I feel like I'm able to compete at a very high level, which is why I'm back out in the field. If I wasn't able to pitch the way I am right now, I don't think I'd be pitching. But I feel like I'm getting there. I'm very close.
So it's been about a year, right? It was the Wake series last year when it happened. Mm-hmm. Actually, let's start here with the people who are listening who may not know the specifics of what actually happened to you. Let people know what your actually injury was and what sort of that rehab process was like.
Yeah, so the injury was the latissimus dorsi tendon, which the lat tendon, commonly known as it connects the lat to the humerus in your arm. And I just fully blew that out against Wake. I came into close on Friday night and then came back on Sunday, and it was just, I think it was like 10th or 11th pitch. Just felt a tug in my arm, went to get an MRI the next day, and it was fully blown out. And there's like one doctor who does all the procedures pretty much. So it was, from there it was like, do you want to get the surgery? And the question is, if you don't get the surgery, there's very low chance that you return to the same velocity and the same performance that you were at before the injury. And so it was kind of a no-brainer for me because, it was, all things considered, a good time to get injured. Like, it sucks that I had to miss the season, but in terms of what I still have left to contribute to the team this year, and then even for my individual goals, it wasn't an awful time. So I was like, I'm just going to have this procedure done, take the 12 months that's necessary for rehab, and then come back next year and be able to contribute as much as I can. So that was the procedure. It was tough, but it's again kind of just a shoulder injury that they treat in terms of the rehab timing and stuff like a labrum, just because that's like the most cautious you have to be. And with injuries that aren't super common, you obviously want to err on the side of caution. And so it has nothing to do with the shoulder, but they treat it like that really. And so it's been a long road back, but I feel like I'm on the good end of it now.
Yeah, you talk about the unique nature of this specific injury. I was reading Greg Medea, the Daily Progress, mutual friend of the program, read a piece on you when you did come back last week against William and Mary. And the rare kind of surgery that Jake Peavy had it. Can you talk about like what you learned about maybe this particular injury and how unique it is?
Yeah, I mean, guys on the team call me the lat man now because I know all the stuff you need to know about a lat when it comes to pitching. Basically, the surgery was created in 2011 for Jake Peavy because it was a pretty uncommon injury to fully tear your lat, and it was treated non-surgically for a lot of people. But Jake Peavy he signed a big contract with the White Sox in 2010 or 2011. And like the next year, he blew out his lat, and they were like, "We're not gonna." Like the guys who have done this non-operatively, they come back and their stuff's not there, their stamina's not there, and they're like, "We want this guy to be back 100%. We just signed him for this big contract. Let's do what we can." And then the surgeon who did my surgery, Dr. Anthony Romeo, literally just created the surgery for Jake Peavy like the week before, um, performed it, and it went great for him. He had a great career, and I think he's done 75 since then. So, pretty uncommon considering that he's the leading guy in the world for this. So, but yeah, it went great, and I'm super grateful for him and how open he's been to sharing with me and kind of, to walking me through this process.
Where was this? Like where is that doctor located?
I had to fly out to Chicago to get it.
Okay.
So you are the lat man. You really do. You did your homework on all this.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you had mentioned that it's a 12-month rehab process. I was wondering because talking to Oak before the season, and he'd be talking about the pitching staff, and he'd be like, "Yeah, we're hoping to get Jack O'Connor back at some point. We're hoping to get Hodges back at some point." And there was never really a timetable on it. So was this sort of the goal to be back at this point in the season, be back going into ACC play, just the timetable of it all? How did that all kind of work out?
I mean, yeah, the goal for me is always just to be back as soon as I can, as soon as I feel good. So to talk about like back by ACC play, like obviously that would be awesome. But in my mind, it was always like, I want to be back like for Omaha last year. Like I wanted to be back as soon as possible, even though, that wasn't realistic. But I think the general protocol from the surgeon is like 9 months, you're great. Like that's when you can start competing again. 12 months is when a lot of guys get their stuff back and really like it might take guys 12, like that extra 3 month period from 9 to 12 months to feel like themselves again. And I feel like I'm kind of getting back into that already. So I'm grateful for that. But, during the rehab process, it was always kind of just like, if it needs to be 12 months, then it'll be 12 months. But if I'm feeling good at 9 months or 10 months or whatever it is, and, all signs are pointing to go, then I'm ready to go. And so it's kind of tough with, something where, with Tommy John's, there's so much data and so many people who have had it and so many procedural kind of points that you have to check before you get back to the mound. But for my surgery, it's like, well, you feel good, you look good, like let's keep pitching. And so that was kind of how it was. Obviously, it's a little bit more involved than that, but to an extent, it was kind of just I'm feeling good, I'm recovering well. The site of repair is perfectly fine. Everything looks great. Let's keep pitching, keep amping it up. So yeah.
When did you throw off a mound for the first time? Do you remember?
So January 24th was my first full bullpen. And it was still, I would say like 90-ish%. But it was the first time I really stepped off the mound and kind of let it go. But anyone who's had a major injury knows you have to do that for a while before you can even face batters. So I kind of built from that, which is like right back, I think a week after I came back to school. And then from there all the way up until, right before the Women Mary series, I just been thrown off the mound, kind of building up pitches, like 5 more pitches in the week before, 1 or 2 bullpens a week, kind of just building that stamina so that I'm ready to compete in games.
You're building the stamina, but are you building confidence too? Because I mean, I'm sure there's a mental aspect to it too, because like you said, that's such a freak injury and there's not a lot of data on it. What from that mental perspective and rebuilding that mental confidence, what has that process been like?
Yeah, it's been great. That's a good question too. I mean, I think when you're injured, it's really tough to, you want to compete and you want to look for things that you can do to improve. And one of the few things you can do is work on your mentality. And so even while I was out, I was just kind of like focusing on how I can approach things when I come back. Like, and I think a lot of the confidence you get coming out of an injury comes from the work you put in while you're, rehabilitating. And so for me, once I started throwing again, like if I wasn't feeling anything, I wasn't concerned at all because I knew I put in the work. And even if something were to pop up, or even if something still is to pop up, like I've done everything I can. I've worked hard to be where I am. And so I don't think the confidence is really ever been a question for me. I just go out there and I trust the work that I've put in and I go out and compete.
So you returned last Tuesday against William and Mary, had a perfect inning. When did you? That game was on a Tuesday. When did you know that you would throw that day? That would be your return. Like how soon to that game did you know, and did you let the coaches know that you were able
Yeah.
to?
So the week before, I threw to batters on Wednesday, and that was my first time throwing to batters since March 17th when I got injured against Wake. And I was kind of expecting it to be like like low 90s, like good execution, kind of not the best, but I was back and it felt good. And then I went out there and it was like 95, 97, really good command of my stuff. And like towards the end of the live batters, I kind of just like got really happy about pitching again and lost focus a little bit. So the ending wasn't great. But the first few batters that I faced that Wednesday, but the week before were like really sharp, and as good, if not better than I had been before I'd gotten injured. And so I talked to Drew, and we were supposed to do another live outing before that. And he was kind of like, dude, like if you're throwing like that, you feel good, you recover well. I think you could just throw in the game on Tuesday. Of course, I was like, absolutely, let's do this. So I was juiced about that. And I was kind of, that week leading up to it was obviously make sure everything feels good with recovery, make sure BMAC, our trainer, is on page with it, which he has been. He's been awesome. So yeah, it was kind of the week before we were like, all right, let's get back into it. But we knew it would be around, if not like the BC series, maybe like the Cal series coming back. So sometime in this general vicinity.
When did you know? Because again, it's one thing to throw on Tuesday. When did you know you'd throw again yesterday?
I threw 9 pitches on Tuesday, which isn't a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously coming back from an injury, you have to be very careful about the recovery time and all that stuff. But again, it goes back to how do you respond from pitching. Like 2 days after I pitched on Tuesday, I looked at Drew and I was like, dude, I feel great. Like I've been sore after bullpens for the past 2 months, and today I feel awesome. So it was kind of just like really good recovery, quick response. Didn't feel anything in my lat. I was like, let's bring it this weekend. He was like, awesome. You're not going to pitch Friday, Saturday, obviously, because it's too short, come back time. But Sunday it was like, let's go.
And yesterday you do come back and again, faced two batters, retired them. I think you got up to 96, 97 again. Seeing those numbers and having these results, how was that added to your confidence right now? And what are you ready for now for your next step?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like right after that live outing before William and Mary, it was kind of, I don't want to say like scary, but there's always like some nerves coming back from an injury. Like, are you going to be back? Like, is it going to be how it was before? And especially with this injury, like the one downside, like there's very low recurrence rate. A lot of stuff is very like awesome relatively to other injuries. Um, but the one thing is a lot of guys, it takes them a long time to get their velo back if they ever do. And so for me, it was, I'd been throwing 93, 94 in bullpens. But I knew I could get up to 96, 97 last year. And it was like, am I still gonna be able to do that when I go out and pitch? And so it was a good feeling to kind of just let it eat and to be back at the stuff area that I am now with being able to get my fastball up there. So that's just, it's a very good feeling to be back where I am and have that again, like that confidence that I've kind of built up, being able to reassure that and back that up with the performance that I'm having.
So what are your expectations now? And I mean, I don't know. It's still very early. It obviously not early in the process. We're 12 months into this process, but it's very early in the last phase of the process, I guess would be a good way of putting it. So what's kind of the plan now moving forward? Is it just continuing to build up, and then see where we are come May and June and how you can contribute?
Yeah, kind of. It's kind of up in the air again. A lot of this is just like playing it by ear, seeing how I respond to certain outings. And so, whether, obviously I want to build up to be able to throw more innings and give more to this team, but very, very to be decided whether, what that's going to look like in the future.
Your before the injury last year, obviously you had made that move from starter to the bullpen and had a lot of success. And obviously you've had success in these first two stints in the return this year. Did see where though that was not a move you initially approved of. Can you kind of take us through that? And that's a very real thing, right? I think a lot of guys coming to this particular program, or a lot of high programs throughout Division I baseball, they're big time starters, right? You were one of the best in the state of Virginia coming in, one of the best in the country coming in. What is that like to when you hear that or have those discussions with the coaches and have to accept that? I saw where you battled it a little bit. Take us through, give us some insight into that and having to adjust to that transition.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, like our coaches here are amazing. Oak is the best in the business, and Drew is amazing. And so a lot of it comes down to trusting them and believing that what they're doing is right for the team. And obviously, personally, you always feel like you should be out there on the mound, and that's how everyone should feel. I think if someone were to go out there and say that, no, I'd rather have this guy throw instead of me, like, that's just not how you want to approach the game.
Right.
And so I think there's some extent where you can disagree with them, but still agree with the way they're going about it. And so for me, a lot of it was wanting to compete myself, a combination of that, and also just being frustrated with how I was pitching. Like I was not a great starting pitcher at the beginning of last year, and that's how it was. There's no other way to frame it. I wasn't awful, but I wasn't doing what I was capable of doing and what the team needed me to do. And so the coaches did what was best for the team, and it kind of it got me going a little bit. Like I was pissed because it felt like 6 out of the 7 days of the week, everything I was doing was perfect. And then that one day where I was actually on the mound, I was just not doing that 1% of thing that I needed to do that ended up accounting for 90% of my performance. And so it was tough. Mentally for me, it was, like I said, very tough and having to deal with that. But it comes to a point too where you realize like the preparation is super important, but it doesn't matter if the conviction in the game isn't there. And so from that point on, I was like, all right, like preparation is important, but I'm going to focus 90% of my mindset on how I'm actually going to throw in the game. Like just take this ball and just throw every pitch really hard. And when you do that, you kind of realize that like you maybe have only been pitching to like 65% of your capability the whole time if you're overthinking it. And so for me, it was just get back out there, start throwing the ball hard, do what I can do to help this team win.
What's the biggest difference in terms of preparation from being a starter versus being a reliever?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be a little bit more, I don't know if cautious is the right word, but more on, again, erring on the side of less preparation than more, because you don't really know when you're pitching. And so you don't want to do too much during the week and then have like be fatigued for the game. So sometimes you have to reel yourself back a little bit, which can be hard for people who want to like compete like myself. But as a starter, you have your whole week planned out, and then when you're pitching. And as a reliever, it's kind of just like get up and go when it's your time. Which there's a lot of positives too. Like you don't overthink it. Like you just pick up the ball and throw sometimes. But it definitely is nice to be a starter and have that like full routine set out in front of you.
Did you ever come out of the bullpen like in high school or anything?
Yeah, like a couple times, but it was more like if I was, pitching on like a Saturday, I would have like a bullpen outing on a Wednesday where it would have been like my bullpen beforehand. So I was mainly a starter in high school, but not, I'd come out of the bullpen before.
Yes.
So completely off topic, kind of. Is that a rehab beard?
Yeah. Kind of. I actually grew a beard like right when I got my surgery, and that was mainly just because I didn't want to have to deal with shaving.
Which makes
'Cause,
sense.
when you're in a sling for 6 weeks, it's kind of tough to shave with your left hand. I didn't want to like slice open my chin or something. But now is kind of also just, I think I got a couple compliments on my beard last year, and so I was like, all right, I'll do it again, see how it feels while I'm pitching. It's worked well so far, so I'm gonna keep it for now.
They're gonna have to update the baseball cards.
Yeah, maybe.
It's kind of a reliever thing, right? A lot of relievers have that intimidation facial hair, right, coming out of the pen. So I feel like it taps into that mentality a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. It's not what I was going for, but I'll take it.
So we like to talk to guys when they come on here about how they wound up at UVA. And Andrew and I were talking about this earlier this morning, but we can both remember when you were a senior in high school, you were here on a Sunday for a visit. I don't remember what series it was. You might actually remember. But my son was running the bases, so we were down on the field, and you were talking to Kirby was talking to somebody, and like I thought it was a grad transfer. And it was you. I was like, holy crap, he's ready, man. Like he's gonna step right in here. What do you remember? How did you wind up at UVA? I mean, I know that's a really broad question, but like how did you wind up at UVA?
So I actually committed to UVA when I was like freshman fall of high school. And so that was really early, obviously, but growing up, UVA was always my dream school. Like I feel like a lot of people who end up here say that, which is a really cool thing to experience. But like I vividly remember like sitting on the couch in my living room with my dad watching UVA in the 2014 College World Series and then lose to Vanderbilt and then watching them in 2015. And like I remember my dad saying something along the lines of like, well, you work hard, you could play there one day. And so like in my mind, it was like I'm not like I don't want to. It's like I'm going to. Like it wasn't even a want, it was just I'm gonna do this. And so from there it was always like I wanted to play at UVA. I was going to play at UVA. And when I got the chance my freshman year of high school, I was like, I'm like, obviously I'm gonna do this. Like amazing academics, amazing baseball program, amazing coaches. It's close to home. Like kind of just checked all the boxes. And I actually got recruited by Carl Kuhn. He was here before Drew. And when Drew came in, I was even more bought in. Like Drew is my guy. Like I love Drew. And so it's all just been great for me. And I'm very glad that I ended up here and have the opportunity to be here.
What's it like? Because the program has been such a mainstay at the national level for so long now, like 2+ decades. What's it like growing up in the state of Virginia and so just the presence of the program from the time you start paying attention to that stuff? You mentioned sitting there on the couch and watching them in the College World Series, but it's just there are generations of kids. You're one of them who have grown up in this state where the program is just one of those elite national programs. What's it like growing up with that sort of carrot? I don't know if carrot dangling there is the right way of putting it, but just that sort of presence across the state.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it goes to the culture that we have here. And even before coming to school here, you can kind of sense like what the culture is like just from watching guys. Like you look at the names of guys who are, were or are in the big leagues that have come through here, like Ryan Zimmerman, Chris Taylor, like two guys that are just like utmost class and respect in the major leagues. And so um, even before getting here and getting to experience the culture for yourself, like you have an idea, like this is a school that and a program where people take themselves seriously, they take care of business, they take care of each other. There's just a lot of standards and principles that are highly applicable to everything outside of baseball, even. And so I think that is something that carries a lot of weight, whether people think about it or not. It's just like these are guys that everyone looks up to. Like, Ryan Zimmerman's Mr. National, and I grew up a Nats fan. And like, even if I didn't put that together that he went to UVA, it's like when you found out he did, it's like, well, that makes sense because all the guys who come out of UVA are like that. And so I think a big part of it is just the culture that we have here and helping, cultivate great men beyond just great baseball players.
Were you able to, when the 2015 team was back here back in, was that late January, for their 10-year reunion, were you able to meet with them at all? Are you having relationships with those guys that you used to watch when you were a kid on the couch?
I didn't really meet with many of them. They were kind of doing their stuff, and we had we had our ring ceremony and stuff going on too. We saw Spores in our facility, which was cool because he's obviously letting it go at the biggest level, which he's great. But I didn't interact with a ton of them. But yeah, I would love to. I mean, they seem like great guys.
Do you remember the first UVA game you came to?
Don't really. I mean, I don't think I came to a game until after I was. No, I came to one before I was committed, but I don't really remember that well what game it was. But I mainly came to games like kind of after I was committed because when you're in high school and when you're even in middle school, like the spring, you're also playing baseball where they're playing. So it's tough to make it to games as a player, but watching, I watched a ton growing up for sure.
Yesterday's game, I was seated somewhat near Boston College's bullpen. And when you entered the game, one of the BC pitchers, or maybe bullpen catcher, just kind of said out loud, "Is that the coach's son?" How often have you gotten that since you've been here?
A decent amount. I like to think that it's been less as I've kind of like made a name for myself since I've been here. But early on, like I remember when we had like our meet the team stuff, like I would like talk with Coach Oak. I'd be like, what's the line for tonight? Like 7.5? Like, what are you taking? He was like, I'm taking the over. And I would get asked like 10 times during like the meet the team stuff, like, so are you like related to the coach? It was just funny stuff like that. And for a couple times, I've like convinced guys that I was like Oak's nephew just for fun. Like rookies who get here, like I think I even had Kyle Teal convinced that when I first got here for a little bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, I get asked a good bit.
The other thing I remember from before you got here was you were kind of, when you look at these high school prospect rankings, wherever you're looking at them, you were in that range where it was kind of, is he going to get here? Is he going to get drafted? Is he going to go pro? What was that whole process like from your perspective in ultimately winding up at UVA?
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird process for sure because how do you put a value on an experience of coming to a program like this? And in terms of like deciding what's, the right opportunity to not go to college versus what you think you're like, no, I should probably go to college. It's tough to determine that. But Oak and Drew again were awesome in that process and kind of just reaching out to me and, answering any questions I had about that process and not trying to like gatekeep information to keep me from going to UVA. Like they were super open with me for all that stuff. And like even when it came to like talking about the draft and talking about pro ball, they would advocate for it on certain parts and just be like the complete clarity that they had with me was awesome. And the opportunity to go pro didn't arise for me. And so I was like, all right, well, great. I get to go to UVA. Like that's awesome. And so I was, it was just again like kind of a no-brainer for me. Like I always wanted to end up here. And so here I am. Like, let's do it.
2 years here, your first 2 years here, both teams go to the College World Series. We saw you, even though you were sidelined last year during the postseason, still made some appearances on television, doing a couple antics, in the dugout behind. I guess it was during in-game interviews, right? What went into all that? What were some of your favorite little things that you did? I think you ate a banana one time on live television.
Yeah.
What were some of the few things you did?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is kind of just like, like you see interviews like on like Instagram, like going back to like that Zach Allen one at UNC where they're like wearing the cups in their ears and stuff. Like that stuff is just like good for baseball. Like if you don't like that stuff, like come on, man, like that's just fun. Obviously, it has to be tasteful and it has to be like in the right situation. But a lot of times, like someone will come up to me like, Jack, I'm doing an interview in like the fifth inning, like get something going. And so I'd be like sitting in the dugout with Evan Blanco, like scheming about what we could do. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of just sporadic, like think of something funny to do and, get some laughs or maybe get the dugout feeling good or whatever it is. But yeah.
What was it like though to be a part of that team, particularly last year, where yeah, obviously the injury was happening, but your team was having success. Like what is that dynamic like? Watching that from afar, and you're a part of it, obviously, but you aren't able to contribute on the field.
Yeah, it was tough because we went through a lot of, ups and downs as every team does. And during those ups, you're really enjoying watching your friends and your teammates succeed and all that stuff. And during the downs, it's pretty painful because you're wishing you could be out there and helping your guys out and picking them up. And so, a lot of ups and downs, I would say even more so than when you're on the team contributing, just because everything is a little bit, um, a little bit more just because you're helpless in that situation. Like even when you're in the dugout, you feel like a fan almost just because you can't do a ton. And so when I could, I would try to talk with guys and have conversations about, pitching and between starts or between recoveries, like what kind of stuff to do during the week and just kind of be a leader in ways that I could be. But it was definitely tough. But again, it was super fun to be part of that team. We had a lot of great player led, or it was a very player led team. You talk about guys like Griff and Anthony Stefan, who were probably two of the greatest teammates I've ever played with. And then on the pitching end, like Luke Showers, a guy who didn't pitch a lot for us last year, but he was a great leader for us. Dean was a great leader for us. Like we just had a lot of great guys who were able to motivate the team and kind of be player led, and it was really good for our success.
Were you able dogpile situation, considering your injury? How did you get to tiptoe around that? Like, what was that like for you?
I was actually in the stands for that. I wasn't able to be in the dugout for that because they have like a certain dugout capacity limit during NCAA stuff. So I was in the stands watching with my family, but I was able to get on the field after and like snag a super regional hat. So that was cool.
And you pitched in Omaha as a freshman, right? Against Florida.
I did, yeah.
Am I remembering that right? But obviously you made some other appearances during that postseason run too. How valuable is that experience? And I mean, like, not just, on the mound, but like maybe it's in the back of your mind as you're rehabbing. Just that whole experience as a freshman, how valuable can that be for you?
It was awesome. I mean, my freshman year, I look back and I'm extremely grateful for A, the opportunities I had to pitch, and then B, the opportunities I had to watch other guys pitch. You know, like when Nick Parker was here, I think he had the second most active innings of any, or the second most innings of any active pitcher in college baseball. And so he's like the ultra vet. Like he knew everything about college baseball in terms of the ins and outs and the flows of the game. He was a great guy to look up to and watch. Brian Edgington was a fierce competitor and he was a fun guy to watch. And then Connolly, you know, he just had an amazing season. He's doing amazing now in the minor leagues, but he was, you know, he stepped up and filled my role when I wasn't able to pitch very well. And he did even better than I had been doing. And so I was happy for him. And it was great to just watch those guys like who had been working so hard throughout the whole year kind of have that good culmination in the end was really great.
All right, last thing. We've been asking, we've had some guys who are part of the lineup this question, but from a pitcher perspective, do you have a like come out of the bullpen song that you specifically request that plays every time?
Yeah, so I'm big on music and I've been really into like alternative rock for the past like 5-ish months. And I was honestly thinking about I'm a big Foo Fighters guy, and so I was gonna go with Everlong as
Nice.
my walkout because that's just like a good like upbeat song. But then I got back into like Alice in Chains over break, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do some Alice in Chains because that's just like heavy metal, or not metal, but like heavy grunge stuff that
Yeah.
just makes you want to throw the ball hard.
Man,
Uh,
this
so I
rehab
went
took
with
you to a dark place, huh? Alice in
yeah, I
Chains.
guess, right?
Jeez.
Um, but Man in the Box is my walkout right now because it's also, you know, it's a great like guitar lick at the beginning, and then also
Yeah.
like Man in the Box, like you're in the bullpen. So I really like that, and it gets me fired up to throw.
Nice. That's awesome.
Ah,
That's
that'll do.
awesome.
Yeah, the Lat Man, Jack O'Connor. We're gonna have to change your name there in the corner. So, but yeah, man, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your spring break. Your West Coast road trip coming up. So you're
Yeah,
a pro
thank you. I
baseball player
appreciate
this
it.
week. Yeah,
Thank you.
The Hoos are in Maryland to face the Terps at the minor league ballpark on Tuesday tomorrow, and then they fly off to Cal. First ever ACC series between the Hoos and the Golden Bears. Jack, once again, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was a
For
blast.
sure. For Andrew, I'm Damon. For Jack as well. Thanks for joining us on 1186 Podcast.